Nuns. There have been many notable nuns who have done amazing things throughout history, such as St. Amma Syncletica, who gave all her possessions to the poor and dedicated her entire life to God by counseling an entire generation of young women. There's also the likes of St. Genviève, who snuck boatloads of food into an occupied Paris and negotiated for the release of French captives. Perhaps one of the most famous of all time though, or at least in recent decades, is Mother Teresa. Whether or not you're religious, it's pretty widely accepted that there's been many nuns who've done great deeds throughout their lives. There has also been the occasional bad batch, like there can be with any religion. In the case of today's video, here on Amateur Archaeology, we're going to be uncovering one of the biggest scandals that happened within the church in medieval England. A scandal that all unraveled because of the discovery of 92 corpses, with some consisting of a bunch of nuns who defied the church itself. If you're under 18, we advise you not to watch this episode, as it's a bit more on the lewd side and is probably the dirtiest episode we've done since our video on the world's oldest adult toy.
He's getting away!
While not nearly as old as that, our story today takes place back in the 12th century, but starts off in 2012, when archaeologists excavating a church site stumbled across a most curious site in Oxford. This was initially discovered during the planning phases of construction near the Oxford United Football Stadium. One out of the nearly 92 bodies uncovered happened to be buried face down, which is usually an indication of disgrace. This type of face-down burial is commonly referred to as a prone burial and was typically reserved for known sinners and those accused of witchcraft. Such burials were usually conducted in hopes that the said heretic would be absolved of their sins. That wasn't the craziest part either. Archaeologists were sent to the site before construction work began because there was already a hunch that it was linked to an old medieval scandal, due to the location of the finding, the age of the corpses, and the circumstances in which one corpse in particular was buried. This confirmed suspicions that this was indeed the burial site of the infamous sinner nuns of Littlemore Priory. Even with their suspicions, the team of archaeologists on site were shocked by some of the other bodies found. One of the graves contained a stillborn infant in a coffin, with several items that likely belonged to the child. Another crazy thing found at this site was that one of the female skeletons happened to show signs of a severe blow to her head before being buried. The dig's head archaeologist Paul Murray added on to the uniqueness of the site, saying that a vast range of people were discovered, both men and women, who had once lived nearby, not just the nuns. But as far as the nuns go, how do we know about their god-awful reputation? And why did they gain such a reputation? In 1922, British author Eileen Power compiled together old records and wrote a book called Medieval Nunneries, in which she describes the Littlemore Priory site as one of the worst nunneries of which record survived. This is in large part due to Catherine Wells, a prioress or head of a house of nuns. You see, Miss Wells took a vow to serve God, which in the eyes of the church means she has to strictly adhere to a life of poverty, obedience, and chastity. If you notice that last word, you'd assume that Miss Wells would not partake in any shagging. But what happens when you partake in such an act? Oh, I don't know, maybe you mother an illegitimate child with a priest. Whom, by the way, is also equally to blame. But to gain a better grasp of the Littlemore Priory scandal, we need to go back to the beginning, all the way back to the founding of the Littlemore Priory itself, back in 1110 AD in Oxfordshire, England. It was in the 1100s, during the reign of King Stephen of England, in which the Benedict Priory was founded. The next century would see King Henry III provide excellent funding and great royal treatment to the priory from the throne of England. This great fortune would soon come to an end, when the funding and royal attention would start to gradually dwindle, resulting in the Littlemore Priory to sink into poverty. It is unknown what happened in between all of these centuries, but on June 17, 1517, a delegate of Bishop William Atwater of Lincoln by the name of Dr. Edmund Horde happened to visit the priory. It was the head of the priory, our dear friend Catherine Wells, that stood out most to Edmund. By the time of Dr. Horde's visit, Catherine had already conceived an illegitimate child with a priest in Kent by the name of Richard Hughes. Father Richard would still occasionally visit to get drunk with and dig up Mrs. Wells' sand crabs. On top of Catherine's frequent debauchery, she was said to have also misappropriated Benedict Priory's funding to fuel her gaudy, hedonistic lifestyle. She was even accused of having sold the other nuns' ornaments to further fund her degenerate extravagance. Any nun who opposed her was not only falsely accused of doing what she was doing, but also locked up in a tiny confined room where they would go days without food or water. At one point, it even got so bad that when Catherine accused one of the nuns of cleaning cobwebs in the womb room with a cloister boy, she punished her so severely that all of the other sisters went on a rescue mission to save her. This isn't to say that the other nuns of Benedict Priory were on their best behavior either. Some of the sisters were allegedly in other nearby towns for weeks on end at a time to get in on a little harpooning from the salty longshoremen. So, with all of this scandalous behavior and abhorrent reputation, it was no surprise when Dr. Edmund reported back to the bishop. It was only a matter of a few months before Catherine Wells was summoned by the bishop and faced charges for embezzlement and just plain old downright immoral behavior. She was allowed to continue her day-to-day life, but was forced to step down from her position at Benedict Priory and banned from the grounds for life. By the time the year 1445 rolled around, the priory was said to be in such ruins that the nuns were afraid to sleep there, and the nuns were sharing beds with one another. Even the new head prioress was sharing a bed. By 1524, Thomas Wolsey, the Lord Chancellor,
I am the Senate,
made a suggestion that the priory be dissolved once and for all. This would eventually lead to the former Nunland Funland becoming a farmhouse, and now in the current year, next to an existing hotel, it would become a restaurant. Sushi, maybe? Haha! Yeah, okay. Thank you for watching Amateur Archaeology today. We hope you enjoyed the episode. If you did, please like the video and smash the absolute crap out of that subscribe button, just like Father Richard did to Catherine Wells. Or in other words, how he took the skin boat down to Tuna Town. Or I guess you could say did a bit of tipping the velvet. Or you could also say a bit of wham bam thank you ma'am. Yeah, that's a good one I guess. Souring the kraut. Yep, that's another one. Boarding up the beef bus. Ooh, I like that one. Bringing an al dente noodle to the spaghetti house. No, I've got a better one. Getting a visit from the old one eye. Matrimonial polka. Mexican yoga. Sending out for sushi. Wait, hold on. How about jamming the clam? Slither in the Hufflepuff. PP Friction Pleasure. PP Friction Pleasure.